I want to welcome you to the PowerPoint presentation on the Forest Jobs and Recreation Act. This will help you better understand the bill that we're presenting and hopefully let you understand what we're trying to accomplish with this bill once we get it passed. The Forest Jobs and Recreation Act is a bill that I was able to drop in the middle of the summer. It is a bill that was created by Montanans to deal with issues in our Montana's forests. What we have in our forests at this point in time is a lot of red and dead trees. Those trees that are green probably will be red next year, and the trees that are red will be ultimately gray after that. We have an opportunity to really deal with our forests and manage our forests in a way that makes sense for Montanans and makes sense for the country, and that's really what the Forest Jobs and Recreation Act is all about. Going out and working in our forests, making sure we keep the infrastructure we have available to us now as far as logging and mills, setting aside some land for recreation, and setting aside some land for wilderness. A few months ago in August, I was able to take a plane trip from north of Rogers Pass to south of Butte. What we saw were pictures like this of forests that were red, and predominantly red, because of beetle kill and disease. Everywhere we looked, as we flew down over that large land mass of forested land, we saw red trees and gray trees and dead trees. And it just shows us the opportunity that we have out there to do some forest restoration work, to put some folks back to work in the forest with the chainsaws to cut some of these red and dead trees, and really restock our mill yards with timber and give the timber industry the opportunity to have long-term supply so that when this housing market turns around, they can take full advantage of it. And the benefits aren't just to the loggers and the mills. The benefits are to the watersheds that we depend upon so greatly for our water supply, not only for towns and municipalities, but also for the farms and ranches that water feeds. Towns like Helena and Butte, who get their water from the mountains, are very, very much at risk here. If we have a big forest fire, and when you have red trees like this, it's not a matter of if, but when. And when we have situations where the forest goes right up to the water line, which is nearly everywhere, and you get the kind of fire damage that can happen when you have this kind of a ecosystem out there with the trees that are dead. Not only do you lose the resource of the trees, but you also create some real problems for water quality and having to treat the water to get it cleaned up so it can be used in cities and towns. So what's at stake here as we currently see it in our forests? Not only are the water supplies at stake, the cities and towns themselves are at stake. Where you have a forest that needs restorative work, if we don't do that work, it puts the towns that are in that forest at risk. It puts the water that those towns depend upon at risk. What's also at risk are forest jobs. It's critically important that we keep the infrastructure so we have a way to manage our forests in a way that makes sense for future generation. And those loggers and those mills are critically important to that. Also, what's at stake is wildlife habitat. If we can do the kind of restorative work in our forests that needs to be done, we can have secure long-term fishing and hunting, which is one of the reasons many of us live in the state of Montana. And there's also opportunities that revolve around outdoor recreation. It's critically important that we be able to use our forests. They're big chunks of land, and there's plenty of opportunity for everybody to play in them on snowmobiles and four-wheelers and mountain bikes and hiking and the rest. And finally, it's about Montana traditions. Montana is an outdoor state. We do the kind of restorative work that we need to do in our forests. We get to keep those traditions alive and well for future generations. the Forest Jobs Bill is really written and built to take care of a lot of the problems that I talked about with our cities and towns, our clean water, the jobs that are in the forest, the wildlife habitat, the outdoor recreation, and the Montana traditions. It is a new plan, a plan that is badly needed for forest management, because for decades our forest policy and lawsuits has stopped forest management cold. And it is absolutely clear that the Montana forests need a new plan, and that is what this is about. Former Governor Mark Roscoe wrote an opinion piece on the Forest Jobs and Recreation Act, and I think it says it pretty well. And it says, by any measure of movement or accomplishment, we have not achieved nearly enough to even mitigate, much less obviate, the possibilities for calamity in our forests. While we have debated and litigated, the degradation and damage has continued to creep through our landscapes. And that's former Governor Mark Roscoe. He absolutely hit it right on the head. And he's somebody that understands, being from Libby, that we need to start managing our forests in a different way. And this Montana-made solution, where we had folks working together on the ground to come up with a plan. And I might add that these folks were folks that, as long ago as 10 years ago, you wouldn't find them in the same parking lot together, much less the same room. But they decided to put aside their differences, because the gridlock that has happened for the last 2 or 3 decades hasn't done anybody any good. And they were willing to sit at the table and negotiate and look for common ground. And these folks were timber companies, conservationists, motorized users, outfitters, hunters, anglers, working together to craft a plan that really honors Montana's values, taking input from all perspectives and coming up with a plan to manage our national forests that are in Montana. And this is really a Montana-made plan to manage our national forests that exist in 3 different areas in Montana. And these 3 collaborations, these 3 on-the-ground working groups that were so very diverse in their nature, were working at the same time, totally independent from one another. The one in the Southwest was the Beaverhead Deer Lodge Partnership, and you can see up on the screen the many different entities that played a part of that collaborative working together, and very, very diverse, large variety of folks. And then there was an area around Seeley Lake, the Blackfoot Clearwater Stewardship Project. Once again, a very diverse group of folks working together in ways we can manage our forests in a way that makes sense, not only for now but into the future. And then finally, up in the northwest part of the state, up in the Yaak, we had the Three Rivers Challenge. Once again, a very diverse list of people that understand that we need to start managing our forests in a way that makes sense now and into the future, and also understood and understands that nobody's been winning over our current situation that we have in our forests. So we've got 3 places. As I said, in the Southwest, the Beaverhead Deer Lodge. Around Seeley Lake, you've got the Seeley District of the Lola National Forest. And up in the Northwest, you've got the Three Rivers District of the Kootenai National Forest. 3 different places, 3 different collaborative groups getting together that came to me independently of one another and said, would you take this bill to would you take our proposal to Congress? I looked at the 3 different proposals, and through a lot of hard work of myself and my staff, we put them together in one bill. This bill, the Forest Jobs and Recreation Act, is one bill, but it takes in 3 different areas of the state of Montana. A lot of similarities on how those 3 different areas are impacted by this bill, but the bottom line for me is when you have people that are willing to set aside their differences and work for a common good, like they have in these 3 different regions of western Montana, they deserve to be supported in that, and that's why we were able to put this bill together and get it going down a track that quite frankly makes sense for the state of Montana and makes sense for our national forests. So you've got one bill with 3 different parts. You've got the timber harvest and restoration component. You have got a recreation component, and you've got backcountry opportunities. 3 parts, 3 different regions, and it really is an opportunity to really address the needs and challenges in those 3 different regions with this bill. As you take a look at the maps that we have up there, the timber and restoration work really is about timber harvest and providing adequate supply for mills in the state of Montana, putting loggers to work and chainsaws to work in the woods doing restoration activities to restore our forest watersheds. And it's also controlled somewhat by a stakeholder group, a resource advisory council similar to that with the BLM. And these stakeholder groups are Montanans that will work with the Forest Service to help select projects. If you look on the map, the areas that are open to timber harvest and restoration appear in yellow. These maps show where timber harvest can be harvested, and it comes directly from the forest plan. As far as the recreation areas go, the recreation areas in this bill are permanent. I want to say that again. The recreation areas in this bill are permanent. It directs the Forest Service to manage for recreation. That's not necessarily always the case. But if this bill is passed, it will direct the Forest Service to do that and really have recreation areas that are tailored to the needs and interests of local communities to support recreation by bicycles, by snowmobiles, ATV, horses, and others. And if you look at the map, those areas are designated for recreation appear in purple. And this bill would designate some 330,000 acres for recreation use, and that's a whole lot of land for folks to play and recreate in. The third component, last component, is a wilderness component, which it protects our backcountry for future generations, protects places to go out and be able to go fishing and hunting and camping, and provide clean water for our cities and towns and for our farms downstream. Grazing is allowed, as always in wilderness. Horse packing, hiking, camping, and hunting. It's critically important. And we have a guy by the name of Smoke Elser. Smoke was a guy that I got to know through this bill. Smoke also wrote an opinion piece on this, and his opinion piece said this: I've always said our backcountry wilderness areas contain something more valuable than oil, gold, silver, or copper. Future generations may be wiser than us and learn to interpret its value better than we can. But after a lifetime of outfitting, I'd like to think that in wilderness we may find the soul of mankind. And Smoke Elser has been a lifelong outfitter, a great guy, and appreciate his perspective when it comes to wilderness. Now, if there are specific places that you have concern, that's where you need to get back to the website and give us your opinion. But the proposed wilderness areas appear in green on the maps. And so it's critically important that, that the yellow and the purple and the green stand out for what they do. Timber restoration work in yellow, recreation areas in purple, and wilderness in green. Now this is a map of the Beaverhead Deer Lodge National Forest, and if you take a look at it, there will be 7,000 acres a year mandated for timber harvest for 10 years as a part of large stewardship contracts for restoring our watershed. It also has a recreation component in the West Pioneers that permanently locks in snowmobile areas allowed today. Some folks are concerned that my bill only allows snowmobile use on trails. We will be crystal clear in the final product. We're talking about areas, not trails. And finally, there's wilderness designation of Forest Service land in this bill for the Beaverhead Deer Lodge National Forest. And also there's some BLM land that were released, and we did that at the request of the county commissioners. I want you to take a look at this next slide. This is a very informative slide. It is the roads and trails open to motorized use. Still open in the Beaverhead Deer Lodge National Forest, over 6,600 miles of roads and trails. This bill will close 48 miles of roads and trails. The black lines show the roads and trails that are open to motorized use. The yellow lines, and you're going to have to look to find them, but they are there, are the roads and trails that this bill closes. Let me put this in perspective for you. 6,600 miles of trails and roads that are still open in this bill is like driving from my farm to Washington, D.C. on a four-wheeler, and then back to my farm on that four-wheeler, and then back to Washington, D.C. again. It's a lot of area to utilize in our forests. If you take a look at the snowmobiling areas, we've got snowmobiling areas of over 2 million acres that are unchanged by the Forest Job Bill. We end up closing about 4% of the acreage in the Forest Jobs Bill. And once again, if you have specific concerns about areas that are either closed or left open, I would ask you to get on the website and give your comments to us. In the Sealy district of the Lolo National Forest, we've got stewardship contracts on 500,000 acre parcels, and I might add, the same is true with the Beaverhead Deer Lodge. They're 500 acre stewardship, 50,000 acre stewardship contracts in both the Beaverhead Deer Lodge, Sealy, the Sealy district of the Lolo National Forest. And like I said earlier, these are guided by local stakeholder groups. Also in the Sealy, it creates another recreation area of nearly 1,300 acres for snowmobiling, and it creates wilderness, adding additions to the Bob Marshall and Mission Mountain Wilderness of about 83,000 acres. It's a good proposal that, like I said, as all of them, was created on the ground by Montanans for Montanans. The third area is the Three River District of the Kootenai National Forest. There is a mandate of 3,000 acres of harvest of trees for 10 years. Also stewardship contracts, as in the other two areas, 50,000 acre parcels to restore watersheds, once again guided by those local stakeholder groups. It creates Three Rivers snowmobile area, some almost 26,000 acres, creates a non-motorized area of a little over 48,000 acres, and it also, once again, directs the Forest Service to study for potential ATV routes that are up in the Three Rivers District of the Kootenai National Forest. It also designates almost 30,000 acres of the Roderick Mountain Wilderness. We've made some changes before the introduction of the bill. Like I said, we had 3 different groups that came to us with their proposals. Before we put them into one bill, we made some changes. Here are some of the changes we made. It does designate 5 BLM wilderness study areas as wilderness, about 59,000 acres. It also releases 7 other wilderness study areas to multiple use, some 76,000 acres. In the Big Hole, we reduced wilderness acreage by just short of 50,000 acres, and we created a national recreation area. In the Snowcrest Wilderness area, we continue to allow motorized access for ranchers, for water infrastructure, and for trailing sheep across the wilderness. It's something that had been done there for years and years and has limited impact on the lands. In the Highlands, because of the war in Afghanistan more than anything else, we have continued to allow limited helicopter landings for military. These landings happen not with that much regularity, and we thought it was important for our military when it comes to wilderness training. It also continued to allow for motorized access for maintenance of municipal water supply and transmission towers. We thought this was critically important. Biomass, energy for the future, and make no mistake about it, our forests can play a big role in our energy future in this country, and this bill addresses that too by thinning our forests to create energy. The Forest Jobs Bill directs the Forest Service to study the availability of biomass in the 3 different areas in this bill. It also allows for a federal cost share for biomass facilities at mills that could use the material from these projects and create some electricity. Stewardship contracting, it restores the forest through selective logging and biomass removal. That's what we're doing, and keeps the timber receipts on the forest and reinvests infrastructure right there in those forests locally to help rebuild campgrounds and replace culverts and really target the locations out there with bug infestations and wildfire risk. From From a grazing and ranching standpoint, grazing is allowed in the wilderness. Keep Montana's ranching people on the land with good land conservation. It will also continue to allow for motorized access for ranchers for water infrastructure, and as I said before, for trailing sheep across the Snowcrest Wilderness area. And we'll continue to work with the ranchers to protect those grazing opportunities. The Secure Rural Schools component of this bill, it is important to note that this bill does not impact Secure Rural Schools. Secure Rural Schools funding is critically important to forested counties in the state of Montana. This bill does not impact Secure Rural Schools funding. There's information out there to the contrary. That information is flat wrong. This bill, in fact, will help bring more money into those forested communities since all the receipts will stay locally. And there's a lot of support for Secure Rural Schools back in Washington, D.C. Senator Box and myself are both strong supporters of Secure Rural Schools. We think it's a good program. We're not going to take away from it. This bill helps add to it and make it even better for our forested counties and communities that are in the forest. Basically what this bill is about is restoring the forest for future generations. That's the way the forest has gone for the last 2 or 3 decades. We could have done a better job, and this bill is about addressing doing a better job in our forest for future generations. It will save and create jobs by putting folks back to work in the woods. It will help manage wildfire risk to help protect communities from catastrophic wildfires. It will, as I said early on, help protect clean water, our most valuable resource, by safeguarding watersheds and community drinking water. And it will improve the hunting heritage that we have for hunting and fishing, preserving Montana traditions for future generations. Montana values, fishing, hunting, motorized use, hiking, and logging, they're all addressed in this bill. Utilizing our forests and making them more healthy through stewardship contracting will help cut wildfire danger and increase fish and wildlife habitat and overall restore our forests. The economic impact is going to be creating and saving jobs through timber harvest, fixing up campgrounds, trails, streams, and that list goes on and on. For an example, if you want to talk about fishing and hunting heritage that we have in the state of Montana, in the Beaverhead Deer Lodge forest, about 40% of the elk is harvested. If we can help enhance that habitat, it just makes the elk populations all the better. And the same thing could be said for fish habitat, and the same thing could be said for allowing us better access through better campgrounds and trails. And then, you know, hopefully in the end we get to see shots of our forests in a much healthier position and in a way that will help future generations enjoy the landscape that we've enjoyed so very, very much. To allow folks to go out and see some of the wildlife out there, to be able to utilize it through recreational activities, whether it's snowmobiles or others, to be able to help do restorative work, to allow better access to the forests without destroying the fish habitat, as this bridge shows, to help bring young folks in to help restore our forests and do projects like this young fella did for his Eagle Scout project, building a bridge over a creek that will allow better access. And then in the process of all this, we're going to be doing projects like this. This looks ugly, but it's actually watershed restoration action, stream restoration, putting trees in the stream to help build fish habitat so we can have more opportunities for fishing. And then in the end, we end up being able to go out there with a fly rod or whatever. In my case, it'd probably be a worm and a hook, and do a little fishing, enjoy some of Montana's great outdoors, be able to do a little horseback riding and packing into our forest areas, whether it's for recreation or whether it's for hunting, which I guess is recreation too. Be able to utilize the forest and use our forest in a way that makes sense for us and future generations. And we have such a beautiful landscape in Montana that we need to pay attention to it and move it forward with a bill like the Montana Jobs and Recreation Act in a way that makes sense for us now and for future generations to come. We've got a lot of supporters for this bill, a broad spectrum of folks from all political ilks. We've got Senator Max Baucus, who I was proud to have joined me on this bill earlier this fall. We've got Montana outfitters, hunters and anglers. We've got sawmills in the forested communities of Montana. I read a quote from former Governor Mark Roscoe earlier on an op-ed he wrote. He is a supporter of it. Former U.S. Representative Pat Williams, a supporter. Former Secretary of State Bob Brown, supporter. Democrats and Republicans alike. Over 1,000 citizen co-sponsors from nearly every county in the state, the Montana Wood Products Association, and conservation groups. This is a good bill. This is a bill, like I said many, many times, it was written by Montanans to help address the issues that are very, very complicated in some cases in our forests. And it's going to help put some people to work. It's going to help us be able to recreate in our forests, and it's going to set aside some land for wilderness. So I would just ask you for your feedback. If you have issues that you want to talk to us about this Forest and Jobs bill, go to tester.senate.gov/forest. If you like it and you want to sign up as a co-sponsor, we'll welcome that. If you have input that you want to see something changed, or something you don't like, or something you really do like, you want to give us comments on it, we appreciate that. I want to thank you for the time that you've taken to watch the PowerPoint presentation on the Forest Jobs and Recreation Act. Hopefully you better understand the bill now and better understand what we're trying to accomplish with it.